imagine this isn't what most people are picturing when I say I'm going to spend the week making lacy underwear, but certainly where my brain goes. Don't you just love undergarments? All of the frills and lace and ribbon, and it's all for naught because no one ever sees it. This week I'm going to try and be majorly ambitious and make a full set of Edwardian undergarments with zero experience. This will include a set of combinations, which I think are the cutest things ever, hip and bust improvers as were used at the time, and a full-length petticoat to go over the top. Now, full disclosure, this project is in full service of a very redonkulously elaborate dress that I will be making to go over the top of them in the coming weeks. But for right now, all of those bottom layers, let's get to it! I've been thinking about this a lot the past kind of week on where to start, as there are so many different things to be making. I've decided to start with the petticoat because it's going to be the biggest object, so I figured that's the one that you want to make sure you've got enough fabric to do, but at least that's my logic anyway. For this petticoat, it's going to be for an evening Edwardian inspired gown that I'm going to make. It needs to be full length, because I know some petticoats aren't, because they're like for walking skirts or whatever. And it needs to have a bit of a train on the back. It needs obviously a lot more volume towards the bottom. I really want this dress to have a lot of drape and flow, and I want it to kind of like fall quite well, but still have quite a lot of, I don't know, volume and swoosh at the bottom. These are all very professional terms I'm using. It's a good thing about making videos. I can just put up pictures of what I'm badly trying to describe. There are definitely patterns you can buy for this type of petticoat, but I am trying to cut costs on this already very expensive project, so I have not bought a pattern. I have done some loose research, and I feel, I wouldn't go as high as fairly confident, but I feel adequately passable at my chances of drafting my own pattern. You're going to be hearing that a lot this video. It's all just covered in ruffles and lace anyway. I can hide a lot of sins. Let's learn to draft. I started out by just covering my living room floor with paper so I could create the entire pattern in one piece rather than individual panels. I've done some sketching. My theory is that I need to make something that looks a little something like this. No idea if it's actually going to work, but we're going to try it. I started out by drawing the smaller circle for my waistline with an increased diameter so I could pleat the back of the skirt when it was actually assembled. I then drew a second circle about 41 inches larger than the first for the actual full length of the skirt. Taking what will be the centre back of the skirt, I added around 7 to 10 inches for the train and then joined this up with the original curve. Finally, I split the pattern into 4 panels and labelled them accordingly. And thus we have our petticoat pattern. I will also be using this to make the skirt for when I make the actual dress. Front panel, 2 side panels and a back panel with a train on the end. I cut out all of my pieces for the skirt, and the pieces of wood I was meant to put in the shed like 5 months ago came in very handy for this particular job. I made sure to roll each panel up with the pattern so I didn't lose track of which was which, because they all pretty much look exactly the same when they're just the fabric. The next day I machined all of my panels together and tested it as a mock-up before transforming it into a petticoat. As you've probably noticed by now, I did make the decision not to make this a tiered petticoat, primarily because I figured when I make my actual dress to go on top of this, this would work as my mock-up to test the pattern, see if I liked it, and I am very happy with it. I've made some notes of some adjustments I'm going to make when I make the actual dress. It was basically just a two birds with one stone kind of situation. To turn this from a mock-up into a petticoat, I need to do a couple of things. I need to, one, reduce the train on the back of it because that is quite long for a petticoat, so I'm going to reduce that. And then I also am going to add some pin tucks into it. I'm not sure at what heights yet, but I'm definitely going to add some, which is obviously going to reduce the overall height of the thing, which then means the length I would have lost by doing the pin tucks, I'm going to make up by adding the ruffled tiers along the bottom of it. Let's head upstairs and turn this into a petticoat. The pin tucks were an incredibly long process, so I'll treat you to the fast-forwarded version for this one. Little fun fact for you with the pin tucks. The skirt got pretty covered in lint and fluff and stuff after being around so many different rooms to work on it. I figured I would just clean it all off at the end of the project. Didn't really think that through though, as there were pieces of fluff permanently encapsulated inside the pin tucks. 16 meters of ruffle for the petticoat base. This took a long time to hem and even longer to gather and stitch onto the skirt. Morning all, with the petticoat finished. Oh my god. It's time to get drafting some combinations. I have a rough idea of the shape that I want to be going for. We all know the famous Met Gala collection example that everyone aspires to own because they look comfortable as heck. I've got a rough sketch of what I think the pattern should look like, and I'm just going to make a big version of this using some pyjama shorts and top thing to get the sizing right, because we all know by now I'm not the most technical when it comes to doing this stuff. I did use the leftover paper from the petticoat pattern for this, as I like to ration all of my materials for projects. I started off making the short section of the combinations. It was very hodgepodge. I used the shorts for some lines, and then I took some of my own measurements for others, and overall just tried to make the same shape as my sketch. It was all very not technical. The top half was even less technical. I just essentially drew around half of the top I was using and then cut out the strap section as I didn't need it. now cut out all of the panels for the combination set. I have done 2 layers of fabric for everything just to make it a little bit thicker. I've been looking at the lace and I've decided that I'm going to use this one for the more construction bits, so the straps coming off the bodice and then any lace cutouts that I might do in between panels, and then I'm going to use the lavender one for decoration, so potentially on some ruffles around the bottom of the shorts, and then pretty much anywhere else that I think might need a splash of colour. Right now I need to stitch the 2 layers of fabric together for each panel and then assemble it all together and add in some lace. So I was measuring the lace out for the straps and I discovered something. I am an idiot. Don't get me wrong, I realised that adding in the lace panels would make it bigger. Apparently my brain didn't fully contribute on this one because I genuinely thought that adding in the lace panels was going to be fine because I was planning on gathering it in at the waist to connect with the shorts anyway. And for some reason, at no point in this entire process did my brain suddenly chime in and go, yes, but if you do that, the top of it's going to be really big too. I'm not going to redo the panels because that is far too much work at this point. I am, however, going to adapt and I'm just going to do some gathering at the top. So it's going to be all like cinched in and gathered at the top and then cinched in and gathered at the waist, and it'll kind of be all balloony, which is, it's a style, let's pretend it was intentional. The top half of the combinations is pretty much finished except for the extra gathering at the top that I'm now going to have to do. I'm going to do that once it's assembled so I can actually gather it to my size and make sure it fits me this time. I need to move on to the short part of the combinations. Whilst these admittedly look like absolutely nothing now, I would say they're going to look like shorts when they're finished, but honestly, I don't know, I'm winging this whole thing. I'm going to start off easy and I'm just going to hem all of the edges so the edges are neat, because the thing with combinations is that like all the drawers on this stuff was open because they didn't really have like normal underwear back then. I feel like I'm trying really hard to explain what I'm doing, but honestly, I don't know what I'm doing. This is kind of just one of those just foots around at each stage until it just magically comes together. So let's futz around for a while, shall we? My brain's actually started kicking back in a bit now. This top bit is the waist, so I don't need to hem this because this will be attached to the bodice, which I actually put over there. The side bits are the bits that don't necessarily attach to anything because that will be the open short part of the shorts. So these need to be hemmed. The bottom bit of the leg, I'm gonna add a ruffle to, so this does not need to be hemmed. And then these 2 side little angled notch kind of areas join together to create the tube for the leg. I don't know, it makes sense when it's all together, or at least I think it does. I was finally ready to attach the top and bottom halves together. I began by adding some gathering stitches, which I actually had to redo on the bodice section as I did them way too low down to actually be useful. I've now done the gathering stitches for the bodice and for the shorts, and I've got my waistband ready, and I just need to gather it in to the right widths basically to attach it to the waistband. And I've made some handy dandy little notches and marked with pins where all of the quarter and halfway points are, which should make it easier. After I pinned everything together, I did decide to actually tack it before machining it because there were way too many pins in there for me to actually be able to get it through the machine. Definitely wasn't part of the plan, but I ended up darting the sides into like these little triangles instead of gathering the top. And I kind of like these little triangle lace cutouts that it's created. I've done the same on the back as well. This has taken me far longer than I ever thought it would, and the studio is in complete ruin and chaos and is pretty much just a pin hazard. I've added on a nice little bit of trim for the buttonholes to go over, and I've marked with pins where the buttons need to go on the front, and I will be picking out some matching ones hopefully in a minute. In terms of the actual like colour and embellishment of it, I found these really nice pinks, and I've got this really wide lace with just some odd bits of pink ribbon, and I'm kind of thinking of cutting out the lace into a strip to cover the waistband area and then attaching the ribbon from the inside in the two pieces there and there, so that can tie into a bow in the middle. But I don't really have enough ribbon to go all the way around, so that's why I'm doing that. If I have enough ribbon to spare, I might put some little bows on the legs as well, if I've got enough to spare, but that is the rough plan at the minute.
Forget it, it's over.
I bought an Edwardian corset pattern that I'm going to be using for a future video, but this pattern also came with free bust and hip pad patterns, which I was using for this. I was very grateful that the instructions on these were fairly quick and simple to follow, as I was working well into the wee hours of the night by this point. When I actually make the Edwardian corset, these will have better use than me not juggling them. I feel like that shouldn't be that hard. I won't lie, I am genuinely a little bit surprised these look so good. I did not expect these to turn out that well. But to be fair, I suppose when you add like 15 meters of lace to anything, it's gonna look fancy. And I wish that 15 meters was an exaggeration. I genuinely think that's how much it actually added up to. The petticoat is so much fun to swish in. It is everything I dreamed it would be. I really want to go back into the petticoat and fancy it up a little bit. I'm thinking of doing some white work embroidery across the pin tucks because I think that would look really cool, and I might add some lace to it as well if I can afford that much lace, because the combinations kind of depleted me in that department. As I mentioned before, this is all part of a much larger project. I now have the materials to make an actual Edwardian corset, which will be coming up, and then after that I'll be making a full-on gown. My own design, it's heavily influenced by Edwardian fashion, and I designed it for the 2024 Met Gala, which has the theme Sleeping Beauties. It is an absolutely amazing theme this year and I am so excited for it. But before we get too deep into Met Gala madness, I have one more project I'm going to squeeze in first, as you all voted, and that is I'm going to be making my next tiara. And I am so excited to finally be making another one. I wanted to do this since I made my other one, which has almost been a year now. As always, thank you so much for watching. If any of the mentioned projects are of interest to you, feel free to subscribe. I appreciate all likes and comments, and I will see you all in my next video. What? Why do I keep losing my sentences lately? Don't come out now. Go, you've been in all day. And now we have sunshine. Great. One more project I'm going to squeeze in first. Would you go down?